Have you ever been feeling like you need to show that you were strong before you were ready to be? Like your parents are expecting you to carry the crown of being a responsible child and you just learned how to carry it without questioning? Have you ever found yourself in a room, at work, or even in your own family feeling so unsure of what you want? Because for so long, you learned how to adjust and go with the flow. If you have been feeling proud of being Filipino, but also quietly tired, conflicted, or unsure where to fit in this modern world, you're not alone. Many of us grow up learning how to be respectful, helpful, and dependable. We learned how to blend in, keep the peace, and put others first. Those values shaped us into good people. But no one really taught us how to check in with ourselves, how to name what we feel, how to choose without guilt, how to exist without carrying anyone else. This space is for Filipinos who are ready to understand themselves better. Not to change who they are, but to finally understand why they think, feel, and behave the way they do. If you're here because you want clarity, self trust, and peace without losing your culture, then you're exactly where you need to be. Hello, friends. Welcome back to Filipino Beyond Borders. If you are new here, my name is Christine. This podcast is a space where we talk honestly about our upbringing and our culture, and how those early experiences still shape the way we think, feel, and show up as adults, especially for those Filipinos living in a different world from the one we grew up in. Today's episode is a little more personal for me. I wanted to share it with you in the hope that it brings awareness so you can understand and gently correct the patterns in your own mind. I want to help you navigate this process to understand yourself better because what we'll be talking about today is something many Filipinos carry quietly: the habit of adjusting, of blending in, or wearing a mask without even realizing we're doing it. Let me start by asking you something. Have you ever been in a room where everyone seemed comfortable being themselves and you realized you weren't? Not because you are shy, not because you lack confidence, but because you genuinely didn't know who you were supposed to be at that moment. I didn't have words for this until much later in my life, but I remember exactly when I first noticed it. I would like to share with you my first OFW experience. When I first left the Philippines, I flew thousands of miles to join a cruise ship in Honolulu, Hawaii. I remember arriving so tired but extremely excited, so nervous though, at everything at the same time. Everything was new, new place, new people, new environment, and a new job that I haven't experienced before. This is so nerve wracking and so overwhelming. I didn't know what to expect. As I reached the gangway, I was welcomed and escorted to HR, where I completely do the usual boarding. They call it as own boarding. And I have my documents, contracts, and safety briefing before officially stepping into my new role. On my first day, my coworkers invited me to have lunch with them. They were doctors, nurses, professionals from different countries. We sat down together and something very simple happened. But it stayed with me for so many years in my life. I will never forget those moments. So they ordered their food confidently. They knew what they liked, they knew what they didn't like. They spoke comfortably, because we were on the table. They laughed easily and they looked so relaxed in their own skin. It seemed to me that they have a good time. And I remember sitting there quietly thinking, I don't even know what I wanted to eat. Not because I wasn't hungry, but because I wasn't used to choosing one for myself. I was used to adjusting, following, agreeing, choosing what others choose because it felt safer that way. At that moment, I realized something so uncomfortable. I didn't have a clear reference point of myself, not my preferences, not my comfort, not even my own voice. And that realization it didn't come with shame. It came with confusion. Totally confused. Why adjustment trying to fit in felt safer than being seen? Growing up Filipino, many of us learned early that harmony mattered and we are not expected to question anything. We were taught to adjust, be considerate, not stand out, not cause discomfort, not embarrass ourselves or others. And that made sense, right? That's who we are. Back home, we lived close to one another. Neighbors knew our businesses, families were interconnected, reputation mattered. So being agreeable wasn't a weakness, it was survival. And that's how we know how to operate our lives. But here's what I didn't realize back then: that habit of adjusting followed me into adulthood. I didn't learn how to ask, what do I like? What do I don't want? What feels right for me? Those questions are so foreign that I didn't even know how to answer myself. I learned to ask questions to others to make sure that they are, that they can have their best experience, but I failed to realize that I am human too and I matter, and I wanted to have the best human experience too like them. Does it sound familiar to you? A question for you though: what was the last time you made a decision based purely on your own preference without checking how it would affect anyone else first? If that question feels so uncomfortable, that's okay. That discomfort is called awareness. Our cultural baggage isn't bad, but it needs updating. I want to be very clear about something. Our culture did not teach us the wrong values. Respect, care, gratitude, responsibility, those are beautiful things, but they are formed in a different environment, a different piece of life, a different social structure. Back then, we were raised by the village. Neighbors felt like relatives. Support was shared. Identity came from belonging. Today, look very different. We live in individualistic societies. We're expected to self advocate. We're asked for our opinions. We're encouraged to speak up. And for many Filipinos, this feels so exhausting, not because we are incapable, but because our internal wiring was designed for a different system. I want to talk about the mask we learn to wear. So, what do we do when our wiring doesn't match the environment? We adapt, right? We become polite, very helpful, we agree to everything, and we tend to just be quiet. We wear a mask, not to deceive, but to belong. The problem isn't the mask, the problem is forgetting who we are underneath it. I wore that mask for so many years at work, in social settings, friendships, and even to myself. I felt easier. It felt so easy to blend in than to risk adjustment. But here's the cost I didn't see right away. When you constantly adjust, you stop learning yourself. And one day you will wake up that you're no longer who you want to be. And that is extremely exhausting and frustrating. Another gentle question that I want to ask you, and so that you can ask yourself: if no one needed anything from you, who would you be? Not what you do, not who you support, not what you provide, just you, just who you are. Try to answer this simple yet so powerful question. It will lead you home, and that is my wish for you, my friends. Why this isn't about blame. I don't share this story to criticize our culture. I share it to explain why so many Filipinos feel unsure of themselves, uncomfortable with the choices, hesitant to speak, afraid of being judged. Nothing is wrong with you. Your system learned what I needed to survive. But survival skills aren't always the same as thriving skills. I am hoping that this awareness will help you or guide you updating the wiring without rejecting who you are. This is where reflection comes in, not forcing confidence, not becoming someone else, just noticing. For example, I noticed that when I thought choosing myself first, I felt guilty. When I felt guilty, I stayed quiet. When I stayed quiet, I felt invisible. That pattern wasn't my personality, it was my conditioning. Awareness was the first shift. Try this reflection. The next time you feel uncomfortable choosing for yourself, pause and ask, what am I afraid of when something will happen if I choose myself right now? Not fixing, not judging, just noticing. Reclaiming choice slowly. Learning yourself doesn't happen overnight. It starts with small things. What food do I actually enjoy? What pace feels comfortable for me? What conversations drain me? What environment help me relax? Those are not selfish questions. Those are the grounding ones. Reminder about your childhood. Think back to your childhood for a moment. Life felt simpler, not because it was easy, but because expectations were clear. You know your role, you know where you belong. In adulthood, especially abroad, that structure disappears. So if you feel lost at times, that doesn't mean you failed. It means you are learning how to define yourself on your own terms. Practice these gentle reflections daily. You don't need to erase your culture to grow. You don't need to abandon respect to have a voice. And you don't need to wear a mask forever just to belong. You are allowed to learn who you are now, not who you intended or needed to be back then. That's not betrayal, that's growth. Thank you for taking time with me today. If this episode felt familiar, you're not alone. Many Filipinos are quietly doing this same internal work. Take your time, be patient with yourself, and remember, you are not broken. You are just evolving. Until the next episode, take care of yourself and give yourself permission to be seen. Bye for now, my friends.